It's time for a spiritual history lesson. Mind control and gurus through the lens of Jim Jones. Alright guys, so I'm starting a new segment. I think this is going to be really interesting and helpful. It's basically spiritual history lessons, what we can learn from the past about our current spiritual scene. Because we all have like an amalgamation of stuff, and everything has evolved over time. And I think it's really interesting to get back and learn this stuff. Today we're going to go over mind control. Back in the day, it was a big issue and scare for the country about cults and mind control and gurus. Now, because of our amalgamation, it's not as prevalent because a lot of people don't follow one specific path. But I think learning this would be very helpful to a lot of people. If you understand the mind control techniques that gurus or government or, different groups use, I think it could help us to not get caught into this. First, we're just going to go through a brief synopsis of Jonestown. James Warren Jones started the People's Temple in, I think it was late mid-60s. I have my notes underneath the camera if I keep looking down. He gained notoriety because he was the first church in Indianapolis that was desegregated. And of course, this is right at the start of the civil rights movement and all that stuff. He angered a lot of people. He used to do these big spirit revival healing service things like you see. And not only was it desegregated and he wouldn't have two different services for the black people and the white people, but he went beyond just allowing black people in or allowing them to mix. He made it so that the white people had to sit in the back and the black people were coming up front, which was a huge deal back in the 60s in Indianapolis, as you can understand. His main message after he developed his notoriety, and it kind of showed itself towards the end of his stay in Indianapolis, but mostly once he got to California, that was when his message really focused in on socialism and Marxism and racial equality. While he was in California, he obviously was working for social change, and he got very involved in he got interwoven into a lot of politics, and the People's Church is actually known for helping a lot of politicians that are pro-socialism, pro-racial equality get into power. There was a bunch of scandal that happened, a bunch of articles that came out. They ended up buying some land in Guyana. A few years later, after they had built their Jonestown, which was specifically designed to be a socialist paradise. It was made to be the utopian ideal, what Marx would have dreamed of, what Marx really wanted was what it was supposed to be in Jonestown. It was also a big deal because if I'm not mistaken, I didn't write this down, but if I'm not mistaken, it was 70% African American. So it was the ultimate ideal of togetherness and sharing and socialist ideas. Senator Leo Ryan came for a visit in 1978, in November of 1978. He was there, everything was awesome, and then some people had slipped a note that said that they wanted to leave. Jones wasn't too hot on that. A bunch of people ended up going to leave Jonestown, and one of the people who was leaving had fired and killed Leo Ryan. They had trucks that had pulled up and basically murdered all the people that were trying to leave, the cameraman and the senator. And that evening they have what they would call a white night, which is a big meeting, called everybody up in the middle of the night. They had the vets there, everybody drank the Kool-Aid, and you know how the story goes. So that was Jonestown. Not a happy story. It is not. It is the ultimate example of what can go wrong with spirituality. So now I want to go into Jim Jones himself. All right. I know this video is going to be way too long, so if it's kind of jumpy, it's because I had to snip out a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to make this part brief, but a lot of this stuff it's pertinent information to what comes later when I start going through the effects of mind control and gurus on spiritual people. So James Warren Jones was the son of a war veteran who became an alcoholic. It was a terrible story. His father ended up drinking so much that it gave him a stroke, which left him deficient in many manners. He couldn't operate as a human being. After his father became an alcoholic, they all ended up moving in with his mother's sister, his aunt. Jones was known for being a really odd child. One of the specific stories that really stood out to me was this was around World War II time, and when the kids would all play war, Jones was known for always wanting to play Hitler, which leads into all of this socialist ideas that he had. It's actually said later from Jones, he had said that Mao was one of his idols. Within a year of him starting to preach in Indianapolis, he had already gathered these huge crowds. That was part of the reason his racial equality thing made such a big stink, because he was outnumbering these like old preachers that had been doing these spirit revivals for years and years and years and years. So him doing the racial equality thing was even more of an issue, because he was this young upstart that was kind of just pushing all these guys out. By the time that he had made it to California, he was already in the midst of pretty serious drug addiction. So you always see Jim Jones with the glasses. That's because his eyes were so red. He was on large amounts of amphetamines and quaaludes, and you know how the story goes. You take the amphetamines to stay awake, then you can't go to sleep, so you take the quaaludes, and this made his eyes beat red. So to hide that, what he would do is put those big 70s glasses on. What he would tell people, because he was this big spirit healer that would do these miracles, he would tell people that it was because if a regular person looked directly into his eyes, they would burst into flames. And they believed him because he was this spirit healer that had a way to make people believe that he like knew what they were thinking. And dark, man. It was not a secret. It was an expressed goal to push forward socialism. Jim Jones' goal in the People's Temple itself, their goal was to make socialism happen. They wanted a socialist utopia. Now, the interesting part was, because it was a civil rights movement, one of the things that Jones used was race. According to his wife and the people that weren't in the temple necessarily but knew Jones, race was not that important to him. He was using race as a tool to get all these people to move towards socialism. Same thing with religion, really, which is so bizarre, because he had been studying religion since he was a young child. He knew an incredible amount about the Bible. But according to his wife, and again, people that knew him, it was an open secret that he was an atheist. So he was a drug addict, he was an atheist, and he didn't care about race. He was specifically using religion and race to bring about a socialist utopia. And when he got to California, he was using these ideas and these things that people were so on fire about to push forward politicians in California that would make his agenda move forward. There's very particular techniques that they use. And I think that by being educated on these things, it can help us move forward in the future and not get caught in these. Because no matter what anybody says, every documentary that you see about these things, about these people that got obsessed with cults and they were locked in, and they were vulnerable people. They were vulnerable people, and they were looking for something bigger than themselves. We all are. That's what we're doing. You don't get into spirituality because you're complete. You get into spirituality because you're looking for something. And yes, you're vulnerable because you don't know anything. When you first get into spirituality, you're dumb. You're susceptible to all this stuff. So it looks down on these people almost that get involved in these groups as weak, pathetic, and meager-minded. The people that got involved in the People's Temple, they were trying to bring about equality and love. And it's a damn shame if people look down on the folks that were caught in this, because the same mind control techniques that Jones used is what took over China, is what took over Russia, is what took over Germany. These are not weak people. These are just very powerful techniques. So now on to the important stuff, mind control techniques. So we're going to look at, did I just mess up my... There are 4 major ones that I have, and one that I just kind of put together. I'd heard one professor talking about it, but I think it's interesting for a whole nother reason. But so there's 5 total, but 4 are the ones that we're going to focus on. The first one is Big Brother is watching. Big Brother is watching is a really common one, and we see that a lot today. Not as much from gurus, but maybe from some other people that, sometimes watch us a lot. So what Jones would do was he had in Jonestown, he would have these big loudspeakers. So you would hear his voice all throughout the day, um, just saying different stuff, talking about how great he was, talking about how this socialist utopia is the greatest thing ever. He was on amphetamine, so a lot of it was probably just rambling. It was just him spouting off at the mouth because he was high and he had some idea. So he, oh, meth is bad, kids. So before that and through Jonestown, one of the main ones that they had was people were basically encouraged to rat on each other. If you think of like Nazi Germany, if you had somebody who was pro-Jew, it was very dangerous to share those ideas because people would rat on you, and you were encouraged by your government the same way that Jones would encourage people to, get rid of the bad seeds, basically. You don't want people polluting the waters. Well, with the loudspeakers, it creates this idea of omnipresence. He is always there. He is always, it's the big booming voice of God, right? And then with people ratting on each other, you have that other, like, well, it could always get back to Jones. It could always get back to Big Brother because Big Brother hears everything. Jones hears everything. That creates a lot of compliance, and it got me thinking about particular agencies that like to watch our stuff and record our phone calls and our text messages and whatever else, but they're probably not, but they definitely are. A lot of it they probably aren't. But how powerful is it for us to believe that they are? Just knowing that they have the power, and any wrong keyword that you type into your computer could trigger a recording, a keystroke recording, could turn on the camera on your computer, it could do whatever. Just the threat of that is very, very powerful. And you can also see it in very proud tarot readers and psychics that want you to know that they have the power to see everything that you do. That's real dangerous. That's real, real dangerous. If you even give the hint of that like I am the almighty tarot reader or psychic, and I know all of your deepest. I mean, you might, but by doing that to people, you are changing the way that they interact with the world, and you are changing the way that they view you on a very dangerous level. And any teacher that would put that on its students is real big brothery. So that's the first big one. The second one I think is like the most important one, and we've seen it reflected in Christianity the most, is the most obvious case, but it's self-incrimination. This one's really interesting because it like ends up blackmailing you. Not only is Big Brother watching your future fuck ups, but he's also already knows the other stuff that you have done. Jones used to actually have people, when they would come into the church or they would start being involved in the People's Temple, they would have to write out confessionals on paper. So it's forever. It's a thing that can be kept. You would have them write down any bad thoughts that they had, any like big fuck ups in their life would have to be written down and then given to him. That's super dangerous. That one reminds me more like an Epstein thing. The way that if they already know what you've done, then they have so much power over you. Not only does that inform them in the future of like how your brain works and your weaknesses and how to tempt you and how to, so much dangerous stuff around that. Now, and obviously the Catholic Church, when you go for confessional, and then the bishops had all the power in the old world, and that's because of this and that. Like, that's a incredible way for control. Scientology does a lot of that with the photon readers or the Mylon readers or the whatever the hell they are. Another one, the connection that I made to this, to the New Age community, and might want to check yourself on this, because this one I was thinking back to when I used to do a bunch of drugs. When you take drugs, it has that effect on you. if you've ever had one of those nights where you've like taken a bunch of um, happy pills, or you've, you know, hung out with Lucy in the sky with them. YouTube, please don't take me away. Uh, you get real chatty. You get real, and you start processing all those things. And as you're processing them, if you are in a group of people, you spill a lot of deep, dark stuff. You will bare your soul to people in a way that you probably wouldn't if you didn't take a handful of drugs. Because those drugs can be such a powerful tool for us to grow and to, see swirly shit on the floor. We use them a lot because they can be a powerful tool. But they also can be a powerful tool for someone who is trying to manipulate you. Because once they have that information, they have it. They have you. They know that at your lowest, deepest, most broken point in the middle of this crazy trip that you were having, that was what you released to them. So they know that that has incredible power because of how you view that thing. So I was looking at the list and I said 4 earlier. It's definitely 3. Definitely 3 things and then 1 extra. So sorry, not fixing that one in post. Distorting perception. Our third one is distorting perception. Our third and final big one, because I didn't write down anymore. Distorting perception. So when they were in Jonestown, they were to thank him for the food that they were receiving. A lot of people were starving though, because these are like city folks from San Francisco and stuff that went to Guyana. They didn't know how to farm. They didn't know what they were doing. They were creating a socialist utopia, but typically socialists don't know how to use a shovel. So I don't know if you've ever seen a girl with like a bunch of piercings and green hair try and use a shovel. I'm not judging, but I'm judging. So, so a lot of people were starving. They were in like serious trouble in a lot of cases. And as it goes, if you're growing your own food, doing your own stuff, there are lean seasons. So people were very hungry at times. And they were to thank Jones for the food that they had. But it's the idea of doublespeak, the idea, the Orwellian, or if you think of like North Korea, where people are supposed to thank their ruler for all of the wonderful gifts and abundance that they have, and they're all 100 pounds soaking wet, work in the fields all damn day, and they don't have electricity, and they don't have this. It's the same idea. I think that this has kind of bled into like the secret crowd and manifestation. Not that manifestation's not real, and not that having a positive attitude and accepting something has already happened, that will bring that in. There's a lot more factors to it. You have karma, you have just a bunch of crap that you came into this life with, so it's not that simple. However, it does work. Ish. We should be mindful that we are not mind controlling ourselves, because if you put up that positive thing, everything's wonderful, everything's wonderful, everything's wonderful. I am love, I am light, I am ba. Just went through a divorce, your car's breaking down, whatever, and all this crap is piling on. There's like cognitive dissonance there. There's no way that you can believe it because you don't believe it, and that's why you're trying to make it happen. You're trying to get this thing because you know it's not there. And that's the same kind of doublespeak. Now, if you bring that up to a broader point of like you have a speaker at the front of the room that is telling you that you need to act as if, you need to do this, that then becomes doublespeak mind control. Similar to how, I'm going to piss off some more people, something has a beard and a deep voice and an Adam's apple, and we're like, that's a woman. Doublespeak. That's looking at reality and saying, nope, it's not true. Not that I am against transgender, but when we start forcing that on people, you are now, especially from a government level like they're trying to do in Canada, in some places they have already done it in Canada, from a government level, telling people you have to act as if. You need to speak things that are not true, even though you know it's true. You know it's true. That is Orwellian doublespeak, and that is another form of mind control. And a lot of these things, that's how this thing snowballs. And if you can get all of these things to act at the same time, this fear of blackmail and this understanding that this big scary thing is watching you all the time, so you better not do what it doesn't want you to do. And then when you speak, you can't speak truthfully. You have to speak as the narrative was given to you. These are the control tactics of a sinister guru. Now on for the other one that I had picked up along the way. This was not one of the Orwellian ones necessarily. It wasn't really a Mao thing. It did happen in China. That's not true, because they took people out of their homes and brought them into the cities. Disorientation that leads to a sort of herd following mentality. So what Jones did was he took people that were already very much on his side and wanted the socialist utopia. He took them out of the city and he brought them into the jungle. And when they got to the jungle, they're all city people. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to use a shovel. Nobody knows what's going on. So they're disoriented and they're not in their comfortable beds in their comfortable homes. So they're not sleeping well. They're all super tired. They're getting loudspeaker stuff at them all the time. They're working in the fields all day. They're tired. They're hungry. A lot of old world people used to fast and deprive themselves of sleep to enact a sort of psychedelic experience that would, then they'd see their spirit guides or they'd see whatever, they would go into trances, they would do all this stuff. So when these people were in this disoriented state, what do? Like, you don't know what to do, so you're going to look to the person next to you. What's that person doing? And then that person is going to be acting a certain way. Well, why are they acting a certain way? Because they're disoriented, they're tired, they're hungry. They're looking to the person next to them. And this circle keeps going around until it hits Jones, who is all hopped up on amphetamines and taking Quaaludes to sleep like a baby. So he is just Mr. Confidence. He knows what's going on. He knows what's going on. You think that you're following what your friend is doing, but your friend is following what you're doing. And you're both following Jones. This disorientation, we have to think of the state that we go into when, I mean, even if you go to like a retreat, or if you go to a big meditation, or if you go to a monastery, or if you go to, or like in the modern day New Age spiritual community, you take a bunch of psychedelics. You are in a different headspace. You don't know what's going on. It is not native to you. And when things are not native to you, you're more susceptible. And you're going to look to the person next to you. What are they doing? Specifically with ayahuasca, LSD crowd, if you have a really, really intense psychedelic experience, when you get done with that, you are just done. Like, you are so, like, your brain is putty and you don't know what's going on. And say you are in an ayahuasca ceremony with an uncouth ayahuasca shaman. Well, as soon as you get done with that, he starts making more sense than anybody that you have ever met, because he's an ayahuasca shaman and he has been in those experiences so many times that he probably knows a lot of what you went through, like, intimately. So now they're right there with you. This may be in your mind, the only person that understands what you're going through. In the case of Jones, you just gave a bunch of testimonials. The only person that knows what you're going through. So they're the one that has the answer, and they can take you, they have you wrapped around their finger. Just something else to think about. Oh, this video got long. As always, I hope that was helpful. I specifically hope that it can help at least somebody see if they're in like a shady situation, like a Nityananda, like it does still happen today. So I hope it helps you to kind of cut through the bullshit a little bit and know that more often than you think, you are vulnerable. We are vulnerable creatures because we have this mechanism up here and it is faulty. It was designed for gaining a social group and staying safe and procreating. That is an easy mechanism to learn how to manipulate. So, yeah, God. Pay attention. Be safe, guys. Don't start a cult. Don't start a cult. If you want to buy any of my stuff, I would love for you to buy my stuff. I got astrology, I got divination, I got talismans. We can tell you what's coming up next. We can tell you who you're supposed to be in this life. I can tell you, man, I can make stuff happen. I can, whatever you need, hit me up. you need something, you got questions, be happy to chat. On Instagram, at Bear.Of.Wands. On Facebook, Bear.Of.Wands. On YouTube, Bear.Of.Wands. About to start a podcast. That'll be cool. Thank you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Say your mantra, take your vitamins, and stay grateful, y'all.